Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, still a young man, played 17 years, looks young. I gotta say, look good for travel around the country calling games. 17 years in the NBA, including playoffs, scored over 15,000 points in this league of ours. Not easy to do, but he did it. Also did a lot of winning over his time playing for a number of teams. Honored to be joined by host of the Road Trippin Pod, Richard Jefferson. How you doing, my man?
You forgot to say, and Nick fan favorite. Nick fan favorite. You forgot that part. That's the intro was so close to being just perfect. All you had to say was, and Nick fan favorite. But if you want to redo it again, we can. I've got time. Well, I actually don't have time, but if you want to redo it, we can edit all of this out.
See, this is why I appreciate you, because I was actually sitting here. I'm like, I got to start with the LOL Knicks stuff. Because how could it would be disingenuous of me as a Knicks podcast host not to get into it. I'm sitting there, waiting for you to come on. I'm like, man, guy played in the fucking NBA. Like, who am I to come at him with his stuff about the Knicks?
What do you mean? Who are you? You're every fucking Knicks fan that hates me. That's your vibe. That's who you are. You mean, who am I? You know what? The world would be a better place if more Knicks fans had that attitude, but they fucking don't. And here we are.
You know what? I think at this point, Knicks fans are more worried about it's for the first time in a while. I feel like Knicks fans have more turned inward with their criticism, me included. We'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, let's start there, because you are kind of known for it, at least amongst Knicks fans. I'm just like, don't you? Look, the team is bad. They've been bad for a long time. I guess my first question to you is, you don't feel bad taking the low-hanging fruit? I mean, it's right there above the ground. No.
The reason why, and this is different. This is why it's different for me personally, and maybe some other members of the media. It's because it wasn't necessarily a rivalry, but that was always a thing when, when I first came into this league, the Knicks were the Patrick Ewing era, Allen Houston, postseason 15 straight years, just a beacon of consistency. And so here we are, the Nets have never won a fucking playoff series, never won one. And we show up and we're trying to turn around a franchise, and we would you had to look at the Knicks as the beacon of consistency in the area. And so we wanted to emulate that, but be better. And so we always took those games super seriously. It was a ton of fun. So when I'm throwing shots at Knicks fans, it's because Knicks fans remember that era. They remember that.
Well, we remember
where the best basketball was in Jersey, and it wasn't for one. It was for damn near a decade. And so I have fun with it. I don't ever get malicious with it, but I have fun with it.
You don't get malicious. And I think, and I'll be actually very honest with you. I think what gets under a lot of Knicks fans' skin, me included, I'm not disassociating myself from this. So I can pretend to not have feelings, but I do. I bleed, Richard. I bleed. It's the fact that I think that, there's a number of parts of it. It's the fact that we could tell the media is having so much fun with it. I think that's part of what I know for me gets under my skin. And, it's also there's a lot of bad teams out there. Why do we always get it? What, and of course we're in the major media market. What is it about the Knicks that you believe leads to so much of, the jokes and what have you?
Well, it's because you're in the media market, and that's just what it is. And your fan base is so huge, and there is a legacy there, and it is Madison Square Garden, and it is New York, but that's what makes it so big. And so it needs to be discussed, because you have, millions and millions of fans around the world that want to hear about what's going on with their Knicks. That's just the truth. That's the truth. That's why the value of that franchise might be different than the value of a franchise in St. Louis. And I say St. Louis because if I say any NBA city, then they're all going to all of a sudden start taking shots at me. And so No, so we're forced, and part of the reason why guys media members start to get angry is because we do have to feed the fan base, and sometimes there's nothing to feed the fan base but this same regurgitated bullshit, and we start getting annoyed at the Knicks management, and we start getting annoyed at the Knicks. So now we're starting to get frustrated, and it's like, God, we got to still talk about this shit. And so it's like, understand that like people don't see the human side of us. It's not like we wake up in the morning ready for Knicks slander. If the Knicks were going to the NBA finals and playoffs every year, our ratings are through the roof. Everybody makes more money. It's all positive because it's such a huge fan base. So it's like, yeah, we get annoyed that the Knicks are terrible and we have to feed the fan base. Same with the Lakers and the Warriors. And like in the 90s, it was the Bulls, the Celtics. You have to feed the biggest of the fan bases get fed the most. That's just the way it goes.
I should have added to the last question, like, other than the fact that the Knicks are often very bad, what do you think it is that leads to so much of the conversation? I guess one more on this, and then I want to move on and talk about some other stuff. Just from like a philosophical point of view, almost, like, do you think, like, if you're a bad NBA team,
why are you getting all philosophical? Why
this is what we do.
Philosophical. Like,
this when you've had to watch to watch Julius Randle play.
Okay.
65 games this year of bricking 18 footers. You get philosophical. Yeah. Do you think bad NBA teams deserve the benefit of I don't want to say the benefit of the doubt, but like, you're bad. You're poorly managed. You've made poor decisions. Your players stink. Whatever it is, do you think there should be some modicum of like, hey, you're on hard times, we'll take it easy? Or is it just like, look, there are 30 of these teams.
No,
if you're one of the,
why? No. You want to know why? Just stop. Just stop. Let me tell you.
Tell me. I'm all ears.
In order to be so poorly run for so long, it's only based off of arrogance, because there's enough basketball minds out there that if you allowed them to do their job, you wouldn't have a decade of just absurdity. Or right. Two. And you're not
most of the two.
King. There are 2 decades. But I'm saying it's the Kings haven't been to the postseason in 15 years. It was the Clippers for, the 90s. And, it's just like they were so poorly run to the point where it's like either you are trying to be poor or you are allowing arrogance and not allowing the professionals to do their job. Because if you bring in professionals and hold professionals accountable, you're not going to guess wrong 5 times. You're not going to guess 5 times wrong, because one of them is going to be a legitimate professional, especially if you do your due diligence, right? And then you get the opportunity of the draft, so that you get a chance at the 3 pick, the 2 pick, the 1 pick, and then at that point in time, if you're doing your due diligence, you should get at that high. You should get 2 out of 3 right. It's not going to be 100%, but you should get 2 out of 3 right.
Or don't trade the picks that turn into the second pick. I just feel like in the draft,
you're getting criticized, it's because it's deserved.
I don't think that that's completely unfair. And to the arrogance point, this is a franchise owned by James Dolan, who has been accused at times in the past of being a little arrogant. Do you think a lot of it, just because, that's what Knicks fans a lot of times point to, is like, look, if he sold the team, people would be dancing in the streets. Some of that narrative has changed over the last couple of years, but do you think it starts at the top with New York?
No, I think New York weirdly is headed in the right direction. Right. I do. I think like you can have a year like this where like your star player just has a moment, right? Like every year is not going to be a Picasso. But this year, I think it's shown, because sometimes you can have the years that kind of expose Ben Simmons, right? Like, is Ben Simmons that dude? And Philadelphia decided that he wasn't. And we've seen what happened since then, right? It's true. They were right. He's not the dude to get them to a championship. They know that. And they have Joel Embiid. They have to do what's right for Joel Embiid. And so when you look at the Knicks, as Julius Randle, he's not going to be that guy. He didn't continue the same progression that he made from that last year. So, sometimes you can take a step back to kind of figure out, okay, well, at least we know we can't go that direction, right? We can't go that direction. We got to go another one.
If you were the Knicks, after what you just saw from Julius Randle this year, not saying trade him for a ham sandwich, but would you, pretend put yourself in management shoes. Would you be, I guess, canvassing the league or keeping the phone lines open, so to speak?
Unless I got something really, really good, I'm going to start the season with them and just see how far, I want to start the season with them, let him get a fresh start, clear his mind, address whatever he needed to do in the offseason, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it was that allowed for that amount of frustration, kind of open up communications with them, kind of talking to him. It's like, hey, we get off to an 0-3 start. I need you to keep your cool. I want to make sure.
Where does that start? Who does that have to start with?
It's a variety of different people. It could be coaches. It could be assistant coaches. It could be trainers. Like a lot of people establish relationships with players that go beyond just the X's and O's, people you can talk to. And then the organization is like, hey, if you got a great relationship with the trainer, the organization will recognize that. And they're like, hey, can you talk to your boy, like just stuff like that. And so it just depends on what it is. So I would start the season with them. Maybe he can get off to a good start, a healthy start. That might increase his value, especially if you've decided that you want to move on. But yeah, unless you get something really good for him around the draft, I would wait and start the season with him. And maybe he goes off and has a good season.
Sure.
DeMar DeRozan wasn't considered, leaving San Antonio. Nobody knew that this dude be first or second all NBA this year. Like Incredible. Sometimes it could just be you just need a different year, different mindset. Something happens.
When you're a player and you are coming off a season, which this never really happened with you in your prime because you were like a metronome. You were extraordinarily consistent for at least the first decade of your career. But you have been around players where things have not gone as well. When you have that kind of season and perhaps that the organization or some within the organization, maybe some of your own teammates are getting a little antsy or some, how does that, or does that change your approach over the summer going into the next year when okay, I was just the face of the franchise a year ago and now my team may be looking to move on from me. Like, how do you deal with that?
It's again, like think about how many people in human history have ever had to answer that question, right? Like it's what like fair. Think about it. It's like one, to make it to be the face of the franchise, and then two, to experience that emotion of them possibly moving on. Like that is something that like very few human beings will ever understand. And it's just an emotion of like, it's part of the job. And are you more focused on the craft than profession? Not trying to take emotion out of it, but if you're like, hey, this is what it is. I've made tons of mistakes over the course of my career, not handling that the right way, getting too emotional about it, getting frustrated about it, just like going into, dark places. And then eventually you realize it's not the situation that dictates your success. It's how you handle each situation that will dictate your success. And so that's the only thing, is that until you go through it, you don't know. But I can tell you that I've gone through it and just gotten better at handling that type of stuff when you're traded or when you're not playing as much as you want.
Sure.
That can mess with a player, and it can take a while for them to even really process what's going on. I went 12 years before I had a do not play coach's decision.
Wow.
12 years. Right. I remember one of my friends came to a game. It's like, dude, I don't think I've ever seen it. I was like, and it was because I was playing for the Golden State Warriors. Yep, my back was really, really bad for the first time in my career. I couldn't move that well. And I was like, hey, maybe this is the end. And then I had Draymond, Harrison, Clay, Steph, all of these young studs. So I was like, well, I guess I get to be the mentor. And it was cool because I love them. And that's part of the reason why I have such a great relationship with them and all that stuff, is because I was like, hey, you guys are the future. Let me not be this grumpy ass vet, which I was still grumpy, but I was like, let me just support you guys and just be that dude. But it's hard. It's a hard transition, but well, that's just part of the sport that you have to figure out. But
you, I think, did one of the rarest things in NBA history. Was you made that transition to vet mentor. We have Taj here. We love Taj. And then you made the transition back to a guy who was on the floor in the last 5 minutes of finals games. Like, what was that like for you I know you didn't finish your career in Cleveland, but to have that run at the end where you were playing big minutes in important games?
Yeah. Well, one, that was the crazy thing. My back was so bad that I really thought I was going to have to retire. I get traded to Utah. I go see, the famed, Alex McKetney. He was a friend. I saw him at a wedding. He kind of looked at me a couple of things. He's like, gave me some few exercises. It's a long story, but Google Alex McKetney. He's a wizard. Anyways, he works with Toronto. He's the head of their science and all that stuff staff. Back got better, go to Utah, was able to play 82 games. And it was more of like, okay, I love the game so much that I will accept this role. That's why when I watch, and I was never as good, I was never great. But when I watched Carmelo Anthony and I watched him go out the league, and I'm like, dude, the transition is hard. Transition was hard for me. And I was never as great of a player as he was. And so I couldn't, and that's why, but I was so glad to see him figure it out, because then it just be like right now he's playing for just the love. He's not going to get better. He's not going to, his legacy's not going anywhere. He's playing because he loves the game, and you see it. Is he limited? Yeah. But does he love it? Yes. Same with Derrick Rose. These guys that are like, they're not the same player, but they're out there because they truly love the game. And sometimes when it's almost taken away from you, whether it's Carmelo being out, Derrick Rose and his injuries, my back going to shit, then you start to, when you get that next chance, you're going to ride that. You're going to ride that with the joy that you didn't even know, man. And I was fortunate. Did you get more enjoyment out of the final runs late than you did with the finals runs with the Nets earlier? 100%, because you know how rare it is to have a good group of guys that get along. They're all pushing in the same direction. It's just rare. In 17 years, I probably had it, 5 or 6 times, and that's a lot. That's a lot. And, and so,
wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 5 or 6 is a lot, because my first 2 years you start off, and my vets there were like, guys, this is not the normal NBA. You don't start off, have no injuries. Like my first couple of years, we led, like my first rookie year, we led the NBA from start to finish. I led the conference, and then go straight to the NBA final. That's not normal, especially for a team with no history, that had never won a playoff series, a bunch of new trades and 4 rookies. It's like they had never seen it. And so, but that's not normal. That's not normal. I'd never gone to another conference finals, let alone NBA finals. I had 13 years in between the two of them. So when those runs started to happen, I'm soaking it all in, because I know my ride is almost over. But you still enjoy it. And it's like, but I will say the one thing, when year 12, when my back was bad, I was like, hey, if I'm going to try and start doing some media, maybe I'm not playing. So maybe I can start working and doing some media stuff during the side. So that's when I started doing more and more media stuff. And then when my career had a bit of a resurgence, now I'm doing a ton of media stuff, because I want to because I've now I'm starting to figure it out, and I'm starting to enjoy it. Yeah. And so that was just like a perfect little whirlwind of why I was doing so much media stuff and started the Road Tripping podcast before I retired, is because I was getting ready to retire. And then it was like, oh, nope, you got 4 or 5 more left in you. And it kept going. So that was probably the biggest positive, is that, and now I give people that advice. Start your post-career 4 to 5 years before you started right away.
Absolutely.
But start your post-career early on. Year 7, start doing things. Year 6, even for the veteran guys, because you don't know, how quickly it can go away.
You mentioned the early days with the Nets. Obviously, those teams, I still remember those teams really well. I mean, that was beautiful basketball that you guys played, as difficult as it was to watch from my point of view. One of those series, the playoff run that did not end in a finals berth, but you did play the Knicks in the first round. I was at game 1. I think we got the lead down to 8 or 9, if I recall correctly. It was a Mike Sweetney putback dunk. I was like, I was off my seat, and then we ended up losing by 25, and probably by 100 points total in that series. Do you remember anything about that series? Steph, it was all those guys.
We took so much joy in that.
I'm sure you did.
This is another reason why I don't mind playing heel to Knicks fans, right? I don't mind playing the heel to Knicks fans. It's because they remember. So when I'm running my mouth and chirping, there's nothing that they can say back to me, right? Because like we were the dominant team in the area. And the one time that the Knicks made the postseason while I was with the Nets, we played them and swept them. And it was just like, it was the thing of just beauty. It was poetic beauty. Like, come on, over that era to have that type of stuff go down. And it was like, we knew it, but we were so locked in. Like we just wanted to, anytime we played the Knicks, they were our most important game of the season. The Knicks could be 20 games below 500. And we were going to be more amped up for that game than the Lakers, the Spurs, the Sun. Yeah. Cause it was a different energy in our building. It was fucking Knicks fans coming in, chirping, talking trash. Or if we were in the Garden, we just wanted to just go just obliterate. That was our favorite game. And so like for me, when I crack these jokes or I do it, it was true. And it was like, I lived in Manhattan. So like I would take a cab down Hudson, right? And, and go to MSG, crush their team, and then be out that night popping bottles and drinking and partying like in their city. It was like the most personal, fun, and it was like just more of the interaction you would get from the people. I'm not like disrespecting any of the players that played for the Knicks. Well, I'm disrespecting
some of them were not too good,
just the organizations.
No, I think that's fair.
No. When we took that made it, and that's what made it fun for us. Is that it was such a big game for us that like that's why we always played so well and we always whatever. My career high on the road is 39 in the Garden.
Thankfully, I was not there for that game, although I'm sure you remember it well. One of the players who you played with there was pretty great, Jason Kidd. Never won an MVP though, although I would argue he should have won it the first year that he was in New Jersey. Before I move on with a question about some of the guys you played with, trivia question for you. Can you name all 5 MVPs you played with?
Yeah. Tim Duncan, Dirk, LeBron. Did I play with Derrick Rose? Tim Duncan.
You did not play with Derrick
Rose. No, I did. I did a training camp with him, my last training camp in Cleveland. He was there before I got traded to Atlanta. So that's why I was like, wait a second. Let me go. Tim Duncan, LeBron, Dirk.
You'd said one of them before.
Who else?
A slight shooting guard that changed the game of basketball.
Oh, yeah. Steph Curry.
And then your last year.
What did I play? Oh, Jokic. Yeah, holy shit. Yeah. He's about to be a 2-timer. Probably.
He is deserving, I would say.
Yeah. I'm more on Joel Embiid. I'm going to go more.
Really? Okay. That's fair.
Yeah. But I love Jokic. But this is another thing. Like, again, I start doing my media stuff and how blessed and fortunate I was that not only did I play with a ton of great guys, but look at who I played with my last 5 years of my career. I played with Steph and Clay and Draymond and Harrison Barnes. And then I go and play with LeBron, Kyrie, Kevin Love. Then I go and end it playing with Jokic and Jamal Murray. Like Jokic is going to be playing for another 15 years. I can bump my guns talking about how when I played with him, right, for another decade, right? It's just, no, man, it's helped me so much because now when I'm watching the games, it definitely gives me insight that I'm able to share. And I try and maintain those relationships and keep talking to some of the guys. And every time, I'll do a Denver game, I'll try and go say hello. Because that ultimately what that does is allows me to bring that back to the fans when I'm discussing stuff and when I'm talking, and just allows me to bring that back to the fans, which makes a great experience. And that's what I enjoy. I enjoy giving this information and talking about the game and interacting with individuals. So I'm glad it worked out that way.
You mentioned bringing it back to the fans. So I'm going to ask something about it right now. We talked about Randall before. Very good player. I mean, he was 8th MVP voting last year, all NBA second team, the whole thing. But there's a lot of players out there like Julius Randle. And then there are those select few, the types of guys that I just mentioned. What would you say it is that is different about the top tier guys?
It typically it's talent can still be a separator because like Giannis is just built different than any human being on the planet, right? Like LeBron, like just built different. Kevin Durant just built different. But I think if you were to say like all things being equal, is definitely their mental and emotional maturity, their mental and emotional focus. That's just the great separator, right? Like that, you either do, you don't. Like, you either have the ability to work out 8-9 hours a day like Kobe. Like no one can do that. That's not like, you can say that that's a skill, but that's a psychosis, right? But he has the ability to do it, right? Other players have the ability to do different things. So that would be, I would say, the great equalizer, because that's how they're able to be so consistent every year. Julius Randle obviously has the talent. Yeah. He has the physical makeup. He has the talent, number 2 pick, all these things. He's been great for a while. He's been that dude. But like, why is it that a LeBron James, a Steph Curry, they could do it every year for a decade, sometimes close to 2 decades, every year, that level of performance and consistency to you're almost become bored with it. But like you get one golden year from Julius Randle and now you're wondering if he should be traded.
Who's the hardest worker you ever out of all of them? Anyone you've ever played with?
Again, the stories of Kobe, which are true, like I Luke Walton was my roommate in college, and he would tell me, he was like, yo, the stories are true. Like the stories are true about his work ethic. He was really, the stories are true. But I would say like, I never played with him. One of the hardest ones I ever seen, Alonzo Mourning.
Really?
Alonzo Mourning.
That doesn't surprise me.
Alonzo Mourning was like he was Pat Riley through and through, work ethic. And he was dealing with his kidney issues.
Sure.
And so like that prevented him. But when you talk about, the amount of like muscle and work and just like his attitude, like he was there to work. And that was, again, the 90s NBA, like those guys that were just like, they were there to grind, be physical, work. So he was an undersized center. He was like 6'9", always battled. Right. And that's just like, you see the Draymond energy and like, he's like, they have the same type but I'm just saying they have the same type of like fight. Like they're kind of the villain all the time, but no one ever questions their intensity. Yeah. It was like, you're almost just like, it's too much intensity. I know what you're saying.
I respected that. I mean, I hated the Heat, but I respected the hell out of them. I'm going to get back to the Knicks before I let you go. We talked a little bit about Randall, falling off. Just looking at the team, they obviously, they tried to bring in Kemba. They brought in Fournier, tried to sacrifice defense for offense. Didn't really work. Just looking at it, do you think it's like they tried to take a formula that was very specific? I've compared it to like a house of cards last year. Like they knew what they were, they knew what they were doing, and they tried to switch it around. It all fell apart. What do you think went wrong in New York this year?
Well, I think that's what you're supposed to do. And like people don't understand. Very rare do you get these long stretches of just greatness, and even then, there's hiccups. Like the Lakers like didn't make the postseason, won a championship, lost in the first round, didn't make the postseason, right? Now let's look at the Miami Heat. Went to the NBA Finals. Like, I feel like they got swept out last year.
By the Bucks.
Right? Yep. They got swept out last year and then didn't have a great year. And then this year, they're the number 1 seed. Golden State Warriors, all those straight finals, then crappy year. This year could have been potentially the number 1 seed, number 2 seed this year, and falling to number 3. So you could just see these breakups. So, because you have to tinker with it. You knew if you just ran it back the following year, that wasn't going to be good enough. You had maximized what that can do. Now, sometimes you can make some additions and it can move it forward. And sometimes you can make some additions and it can move it backwards. Right. And so that's why when you're looking at what the Knicks had to do, they had to bring in offense. You can be the number 1 rated defense, but if you're the 30th ranked offense, it's like you gotta, okay, let's see if we can get some offense in here, and let's go to 8th in defense if we can get, middle of the pack on the offense.
That was the goal.
Yeah, that was the goal. And it didn't work out. And it's like, okay, now why did it not work out? If Kemba Walker, respectfully, great dude, if he had anything left in his knee, then he wouldn't be being, traded and moved around. His knee's in a bad spot and is a smaller guy. And you know what I'm saying? And if he's not scoring at a high level, then he's going to be tough to keep on the floor. And then Fournier. I think Fournier is a good piece. I think Fournier is a really good piece. Yeah. He's a good piece, but ultimately all the pieces didn't fit. A lot of it had to do with Julius Randle's performance. That was such a severe drop off. And then the team wasn't as great, in certain areas. So I think you just got to tinker with it, and then maybe they'll tinker with it. That's why I say you should keep them to start the season, just to see. Maybe they start off in the 6th spot. Maybe his value, because maybe things they can. Now you got to add, you got to tweak. That's where player development comes in. That's how Memphis got better each year. Bane shows up. All these guys just keep getting better inside their organization. That's a well-run organization. Their guys inside get better.
I was going to ask, when you said you thought the Knicks were on the right track a minute ago, does that have to do with the fact that they have finally, for the first time in seemingly forever, a young core that, like, look, we know they don't have a job. We know they don't have a Luka or someone of that ilk. But do you like the young talent that the Knicks have?
Yeah, I think it is. But development of your talent is so key. It is so important. And the Knicks have not done that. So if you're not getting free agents, you're not winning games, you're not getting young talent, you're just doing all the things wrong, all of it wrong.
I would agree with that.
Like, and that's where like people get frustrated. It's like, guys, you can't be doing all of this wrong. You almost have to try to do that. And so I like the young talent. And look, you go back to the Lakers' young talent. Yes, they traded away all their young talent, but it won them a championship. Yeah. Right. At the end of the day, you will trade anything for a championship. They would trade LeBron James today if they thought, if you said, hey, we will present you with a trade for LeBron James that will guarantee you guys win a championship next year, they would do it, because that's what we're in this for. And so if you put yourself in a situation that, you feel the team can get better, then that's what you do.
Couple more. RJ Barrett is, I would say, is the highest pedigree young talent they have. He finds himself, we talk about Knicks kind of disrespect, finds himself often left off these lists of top players like under a certain age. Put up 20 a game this year, starting New Year's Eve. He put up some even higher numbers. Obviously the efficiency is not there. Will it come? He's beginning to the line more. We like what we see from RJ Barrett here. What do you think it is about him that he seems to be kind of left out of the conversation? Again, not with the Jaws and the Lukas of the world, but with that kind of next tier of young guys.
He's got to get better.
I would agree with that. I agree.
Listen, man, like we can't just scoff at the Jason Tatum's, Lukas, Jaws, and like, do we see what those boys like? That's fine. Like, it's okay. Like, not like you. I feel like I had a pretty solid career. No one ever mentioned me in the same breath as T-Mac and Vince and Kobe. It's like, and I'm not saying that RJ Barrett can't get there, but I'm saying RJ Barrett can be an important piece to a great team. Like, I think he has all of those things, and that's all you want. The minute you draft a guy, it's like, one, is he an NBA player? Okay, good. Higher you get up, the more likely he's going to be. Two, how much of a contributor is he? Right? Is he a guy? And then it's like, how healthy, how available, how much better does he get every year? And so a lot of these boxes, you just kind of got to check along the way. And I think RJ Barrett is checking all of the boxes. He cares. He wants to be in New York. Now, y'all got to keep, you guys, the Knicks are like 2 or 3 more like quality moves away, because maybe Damian Lillard says he wants to go to New York. Now you have quality pieces that a team might take to make the trade. I'm making that up and pulling that out of my ass, but I'm saying you could see the Damian Lillard situation in Portland could go either way right now.
Sure.
So what if he says New York? But the problem is that if you guys had nothing to even offer, New York would be, or Portland would be like, God, no. That's why it's even important to be hitting on the Obi Toppins. It's important to be hitting on these players, because even if they don't become great players, they're still impressive assets that you can move and do positive things with. Y'all just haven't been hitting on anything for 15 years.
It was a long time. Trust me. We go through the draft record periodically on this podcast. Two more. Alec Burks, you played with a long time ago. I had to ask this before I let you go. Did you ever foresee a situation where he would be playing 35 minutes a night as a starting point guard in the National Basketball Association?
I'll tell you what, he's such a good dude, good country boy. Love my young guy. That was another guy. I played with Rudy Gobert. Jeez, I forget about all these.
Oh my God, you did play with Rudy.
Yeah, I played with Rudy Gobert and Gordon Hayward. No, I think Alec has a ton of talent. The kid has a ton of talent. I like
Alec, to be clear.
Yeah, he really likes the game of basketball. He had so many injuries over the course of his career and not really playing like super consistent, at multiple, I think, shoulder surgery, stuff like that. And that's tough. That's tough. But like, did he have the talent to be doing this? Yes. Should Alec be paying 35 minutes a game? No, he should not, because he's getting old. And you can tell him I said that. And you listen, you can play 35 minutes and play 5 more years, or you can play 25 minutes and play 7 more years. Pick the 7, bro. Pick the 7. But again, that also shows the space that the Knicks were in. The Nets were in the same spot. Right?
Yeah.
Patty Mills was struggling in the late part of the season because Joe Harris goes out 14 games into the season. Kyrie's not playing at all. So he looked good in the beginning of the season, but then all of a sudden this dude had played like with 20 games left. He had played more minutes than he ever had in his career. And it's like,
and fell off cliff.
And fell off a cliff. Like that's not the role that he excels in, that he thrives in. Like Alec Burke, that's not the role that he excels in. It's that thrives in. Even if he's struggling, you're asking him to do something that's probably not best suited for him. Yeah. Right. So then people get frustrated, because then you get frustrated at the player. Right. And the fans might be like, oh, look at Alec Burke, what he's doing. It's like, well, he shouldn't be in that role, but he's doing it the best that he can, because that's all you guys got. And he's a gamer and he's competitive. So he's going to fucking try his best. But that's where players see organizations run like that. And you're just like, do I really want to take my free agency there?
It's a great call.
Yeah. And then I'm going to have the fans boo me because the management doesn't know how to put the players around. And I say all this to say the Knicks have done a better job. That's what we're talking about, of making it more inviting. The Brooklyn Nets were dead in the water after the famous worst trade in NBA history, the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett got fleeced for all their assets. Sean Marks came in, made some moves, right? And made it attractive for free agents with D'Angelo and Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert and Jared Allen, all of these super consistent players in the league, just a bunch of high level role players. And like D'Angelo squeaked in one All-Star game. Yeah. Jared Allen got one All-Star game, just with good, solid, high level quality players, made it attractive. And then you got Kyrie and KD. Same happened in LA. They make the postseason. They're like the 8th, scrappy. And like guys are like, I'll go play with that. So then they get Kawhi and Paul George. You have to make yourself available. You can't tell players to come save you. And that was why I would always get so frustrated with the Knicks and the Knicks fans. And it's like, players don't want to go be a savior. It's already too hard to have to play the game, let alone like be expected to like you're not sure if the organization is going to put the right pieces around you because they haven't done anything right in the last 15 years. Like it's not that hard. You're
echoing a lot of stuff that I've been saying over the last couple of years in terms of like just win games, show that you're capable of winning games. And then you're in New York, at some point.
People are going to come. It's my favorite city. It's my favorite city.
I was about to say, you're the one telling stories about Cavs in Manhattan. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I love the Nets. Like I got drafted by there. New York's my favorite city. I was living in Tribeca. Like I know how popular New York is. I know that's why it's like, how are you guys messing this up? Like, I know how easy it is. The Nets are getting free agents. Like you guys can get free agents, but it was just, and so I think that's it, man. But the messing with Knicks fans, that's just fun for me. Right.
You seem to have fun with it.
Yeah, man. Because you know what it was? I was just, like I said, where I lived, I was always about. So I'm in the city, I'm in the restaurants with the Knicks fans, laughing, joking, like, watching games in bars. Like that's what I used to do. So it was just like, I know the pain. I know how frustrated you guys are. So it's funny to kind of like dig a little bit. And I'll be there when you guys are just like, oh, it's still a Nick town. It's still a Nick town. It's like, Joe, like we know that's what makes it funnier. That's what makes it funnier.
We may be terrible, but it is still a Nick down. And I appreciate the hell out of you coming on and going a little back and forth with me on this stuff because I know, other Knick fans appreciate it as well. Last one I want to ask you, who's someone you want to interview on Road Trip and that you haven't yet? You've had the pod for a long time. Is there anybody you still haven't gotten as a guest that you'd love to talk to?
Nah. No, man. Like I think the guys that, there's the Michael Jordans, there's the, the legends. I won't, I say like every guest we get, man, I'm just so happy because it's like, this is a cool job, man. And it just becomes something that's fun. And I've been Mike Trout, I've had Lindsey Vonn, we've had, Bill Walton, Tim Duncan, like all these guys like have come on. It's been fun, but I kind of like the journey versus like that North Star.
Sure.
Right? There is that North Star, but like, Jordan's not sitting down and doing my podcast. There's no so it's like, I'm not even going to put that out there. Like Barack Obama, what are you doing next Tuesday? You want to come hang out with me? You want to come?
You don't think you do your pod? He does stuff. He popped up on Netflix the other day for me. I was turning on a special for my kid on like National Geographic. There's Barack Obama narrating it.
Yeah. See, like that's, no, I keep my expectations low. Just like, I was like, no, we're just a simple little pod. We just like to tell some stories. So no, man, I honestly, thank you for having me on, man. And I love talking hoops, especially with Knicks fans, because there's always a pain I hear in their voice that just helps me sleep at night. And so I just want to tell
I have to laugh.
I really enjoy it. It's funny how the Knicks fans have become the new Red Sox fans and the new Cubs fans. Like you guys are those this generation, like the Cubs fans that were just hated themselves. The Red Sox fans, they hated that they were Red Sox fans. They hated that they had no choice but to root for the team that would break their heart. Oh,
we're not there yet.
Yes, you are. Yes,
listen, there is self-loathing.
Yes,
there was a lot of self-loathing this year. I'll be the first to admit it. I still would not trade my Knicks fan in for anything. I will say
I agree. You sound like Cubs fans. You sound like so. Hopefully you guys don't have like 100-year drought like the Cubs and like
this is next year's our year, Richard. We're gonna trade for who? Zion, Donovan Mitchell. Let's see who else we could get on the team. Next year's
you guys. That's a beautiful. Honestly, that is a pipe dream. That is a pipe dream.
That might be a bit of.
No, I'm just talking. That's not true. You guys literally. Honestly, that's what I'm saying. Knick fans, I'm just joking. You guys have position. You guys are in a better position. Let me say, you have only been in a position this good probably 2 or 3 times in the last 20 years.
I would agree with
that. So that means you're going in the right direction, right? Even coming off a year like that, like you're still going in the right direction, because there were years where it was like, well, we're going to start over again. New coach, new GM, trade everybody. It's like, no, like you guys got a chance.
I was about to say, now don't fuck it up. Richard Jefferson, host of the Road Trippin Pod, of course, part of the Blue Wire podcast family. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate the time. This was a lot of fun.
Do you have Magic Treehouse books behind you?
Well, since you asked, this was my daughter's Easter present. Yes, it is all, how many? 28 books of the Magic Treehouse series. Yes. My 2 little boys, that's why I was like, oh God, the Magic Treehouse. Because it's like, that's the audio book that every single night they want to listen to is that. Oh, really?
Yeah, that's how I know it. And so then I have the books and I have the thing, and now we're not getting paid to talk about the Magic Treehouse, but damn, kids love that. Damn, kids love it, man. They love that, man.
So someone from her class brought, I guess, one of the books in, and she came home one day. She's like, I need the Magic Treehouse.
They introduce her to the audiobook. It's Yeah, the audiobooks on that's their bedtime stories. Yeah, shut up. You can listen. They tell me to go, shh, Daddy, can you put your AirPods in? I don't want to hear your phone. So sorry.
I talk enough. I wouldn't mind having somebody else read the stories for a night or two out of the week.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Just that's the move. You guys have a good day. I appreciate you guys for having me on.
You too, Richard. Be well.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.